Don't call me kid. Don't call me baby. Message maybe. Anyways, Happy New Year, besties. Welcome to my first video of 2024. It feels good to be back. I thought I would start off the year with a December wrap up because it just feels right. I want to talk about the books that I read during December. A lot of these I haven't shown in any videos or haven't talked about, so I'm excited to tell you what I thought about these. In saying that, I didn't have any new 5-star reads. I did do a reread which was 5 stars, but yeah, I didn't have any new 5-star reads, which is a little sad, I'm not gonna lie. I hate it when I get to the end of the month and I don't have any books that I was obsessed with, but I did have quite a few 4 stars and a lot of books that I did really enjoy and some recommendations for you guys. I managed to read exactly 200 books in 2023. I got to, I think a couple days after Christmas, and I realized I was sitting at 198 books and I was like, oh my gosh, surely I just try and finish 2 more books this year to kind of get to that 200, just honestly for no other reason than it would just be satisfying. My goal for 2023, my reading goal, was 80 books, so we did indeed reach that, which is nice. I don't like setting myself a goal that feels like pressure because I don't want reading to feel like pressure or feel like I have to do it. Do you know what I mean? So I often set myself a goal that is quite realistic for me. And let's just remember, reading is literally my job. So I definitely read a lot more than I would if I didn't make book videos for my job. And I also want to say one of my reading goals for 2024 is actually to read less. So I would love to not read 200 books in 2024. I would love to kind of get outside a little bit more, kind of socialize a little bit more, leave my house a little bit more. So hopefully we actually don't read 200 books in 2024 and we might do some other things instead. I'm still hoping I read a lot, but I don't think I need to read 200 books a year. Comparing reading with other people is not a fun thing to do, so just figure out what works for you. And I feel like I have figured out what works for me. So in saying that, let's have a look at my reading journal. Oh, I did terribly with my TBR in December. Terribly. I read 3 books from my TBR, which is probably the worst I've done in quite a while. And also in saying that, I don't think I'm gonna do a January TBR because 1, we're already a decent way into January. 2, I'm kind of feeling a little bit slumpy and I feel like giving myself a TBR might make me feel even slumpier. I feel like if you're in a slump, the worst thing you want to do is give yourself a list of books that you feel like you have to read. And 3, I think I'm honestly just going to try and get through a few more books that were on my December TBR since I didn't really get to that many. So I might just cross it over into January. But yeah, I feel like I'm already rambling. So let's get started into the books that I read in December. I'm gonna start off with Whisper by Lynette Noni. This is YA, ooh, is this sci-fi or is this dystopian? Maybe dystopian, let me look this up actually. Goodreads says young adult fantasy, science fiction, dystopian. Basically we are following a girl who doesn't speak and she is locked away in this facility by the government because she's really dangerous. We don't know why she's dangerous, and obviously you kind of find out a lot of information as the book progresses. It honestly reminded me a lot of the first book in the Shadow Me series because it has that dystopian feeling. At the start of Shadow Me, she's locked away. It's got very similar vibes in certain ways, and for part of this book I was is this just literally a carbon copy of Shadow Me, because this was published after Shadow Me, I'm pretty sure. So I was a bit oh, I feel like I'm just kind of reading something similar, but I will say as the book progressed I was okay, this isn't as similar as I was originally thinking it was. So I feel if you are reading it and you're kind of feeling like that, I feel it does change, or at least that's how I felt. I love the premise of this. I thought it was really fascinating. Also, there's just so many things as you're reading where you're I want to know why this is happening, and you slowly obviously find things out. And I love books like that where you're really you don't know anything and then you're slowly piecing things together. So it was a really fun, easy, quick read. I feel the first 100 pages you just don't know anything. You're trying to really piece things together. You have no idea what's going on. Then the next 100 pages you kind of start to feel you know what's going on, and then the last 100 pages it kind of flips on its head again and you're kind of taken to a new environment and you get new information. And I was just kind of I feel I needed more than what it was giving me. I wish it had been 100 pages longer and it had fleshed out some of the things a little bit more rather than just jumping to a whole new thing. I know that there is a second book and it's a little duology, and so I haven't read that, and so I don't want to give my comprehensive thoughts because some of my qualms might be revised, I guess, once I read the second book, which I do want to read. I do want to read the second book. So yeah, I don't want to be these are my final thoughts and that's it, because I haven't read the end of the series. But it was really fun, it was really easy. I definitely recommend it. And overall, I think I gave it like maybe a 4 or a 4.25, maybe like 4 stars. I think if you like Shatter Me and you want something like that gives those vibes, definitely pick this book up. In December, I also read Ghost by Dolly Alderton. This was on my 23 books I want to read in 2023, and I finally got to it in December, like right before the year ended. This is like an adult general fiction, maybe literary fiction, I'm not exactly sure, but it's about a woman in her 30s and she's just navigating life. Like that is kind of what it is. Like she is navigating being single in her 30s, her career, just like what she wants to do. She is like dating, so she's navigating that. She is quite cynical, I would say, and I think overall I didn't enjoy this one as much as I was hoping to. I've read both of Dolly Alderton's non-fiction books and I loved them. I adored them. But I feel like this book just like, I was not the demographic for this. Like it was just not for me, but I can see why so many people love this. And I think if you are in like the target audience for this book, you would absolutely adore it, because I do love Dolly Alderton's like story writing abilities and her writing and just the way she creates characters and the depth and the, I guess like the flaws that they have, because they just feel quite real. But overall, I was just like, I just like didn't feel any type of way about it, I think is what I'm trying to say. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was good. I thought it was fine. I would recommend it to other people, but it just like wasn't my favorite. Next up, I started reading the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. If you guys know, I read Renegades, like that trilogy by Marissa Meyer earlier in 2023, and I adored it. I loved it. I had so much fun with it. And a lot of you said, oh my gosh, if you liked that, you should read the Lunar Chronicles, which is another YA series that she has written, another YA sci-fi series that she has written. And so I read the first 3 books as well as one of the novellas, which I don't own the physical copy of. I'm also like currently reading the 4th and final book, which is called Winter, but it's just quite long, so I haven't finished it yet. But what is really fun about these books is that they are all kind of like fairy tale retellings or reimaginings. And so the first book is called Cinder, and it is kind of like a retelling of Cinderella. We follow a cyborg called Cinder, and she's living in this world where cyborgs are really like frowned upon. People don't really see them as humans or like real people, so they're treated as like lower class. So I don't want to call her a servant, but like it kind of gives those vibes. And Cinder is a mechanic. She works for her family. She has like an evil stepmother. And I don't want to go like too into it because I think it is really fun to just like, you know, read it and find out for yourself. But it was a lot of fun. She meets the prince, and there's also this whole like political situation going on with are they called the Lunars? The Lunar people? I think it's like a planet called Luna, I think. And there's like some political issues between like Cinder's kingdom and then the Lunar people, and so there's like that going on. So you have Cinder, and then when you read Scarlet, you meet a new protagonist called Scarlet, and this is like a Red Riding Hood retelling, which was really fun. I quite enjoyed this one, and it's really cool because this is set in the same universe, so you're dealing with the same like political situation. In this book, Scarlet's grandmother goes missing, and so she is trying to like figure that out, and she meets a guy called Wolf on the way, which is really interesting. But it also crosses over into Cinder, so even though you're reading a new storyline, it is like a continuous story. Like they they link basically. And then I think this one was my favorite out of the 3 that I've read so far, but I think Winter might end up being my favorite because I feel like the series just gets better as it goes along. But Cress is a retelling of Rapunzel, and it's about a girl who's lived in like this spaceship by herself for most of her life, just like alone. And then she comes into contact with a group of people, and obviously like the story kind of goes from there. And again, it links up with these books. And then I think Winter kind of has like everyone's POVs that we've seen in all of these. So we have 3 different FMCs in these 3 books, and we also have a bunch of like side characters and friends and romantic interests and things like that, and then we get like all of those POVs in Winter, which like I said is the final book. So it's a really fun series. Like I said, I do think I would have liked it more if I was a little bit younger. I think it's like a 4-star series for me overall. I think I rated the first book maybe like 3.5, and then the other 2 books like maybe 4 stars, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's just like quick and easy and just like full of adventure and action and fun, and I definitely recommend it. Next up, I read Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. Pichet. This is just such a beautiful edition. I got mine from Booktopia, but I know you can get it from a bunch of other places. But the edges on this are just so beautiful. I was definitely influenced to pick this up because I heard Hayley Fan talk about it. She said she listened to the audiobook of it and Meryl Streep is the narrator, and that really convinced me that I wanted to read this and specifically like listen to it as an audiobook, and I'm so glad that I did. This story is basically about a woman who is telling her kind of like her life story to her 3 daughters who are now adults, and it's set in COVID times and they're like in lockdown together at the parents' cherry picking farm, and it's, I don't know, it's just such a sweet story. I will say like the COVID thing is a very tiny part of the story, and I feel like I hate reading about COVID stories and like lockdown stories, but this one did not bother me at all. But it's just such a fun story. It literally just feels like Meryl Streep is telling you a story of her life, which obviously it's not actually her life, but in this book it is. And she is talking about how she was a young actress and kind of like the life she lived as a young actress, what it was like filming these TV shows and these movies, and the people that she met and the guys that she fell in love with. I really enjoyed it, and I think if you just want something like general fiction that isn't going to be like crazy heavy, it's not going to be like super action packed, but you just want like something nice to listen to when you're like cleaning the house or like doing your washing or like whatever it might be, I think this is such a great book to listen to. But yeah, there's really not that much to say about it, I feel like. Okay, I'm kind of scared to talk about this. Next up, I read Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie and Never by Jessa Hastings. So I feel like a lot of people have been waiting to hear my thoughts on this, and I'm like scared to talk about it. I feel like there's a lot of like pressure on this review, but I'm just gonna tell you exactly like how I felt and what I thought. As you guys know, Jessa Hastings is one of my favorite authors. She wrote the Magnolia Parks universe, which are my favorite books of all time. I absolutely adore those books. And in December, she came out with a new book called Never. And she, on her socials, was saying how this is a Peter Pan, I don't know if reimagining is the right word, but it's almost like a continuation of the Peter Pan story. Like if the Peter Pan story continued, this is a storyline of it. So in this book, Daphne, who is the main character, is the granddaughter of Wendy, I think. Yeah. And all of the girls in her family, so Wendy and then her mother and then her grandmother Wendy and then also her great-grandmother as well, so Wendy's mother, they have all had interactions with Peter Pan. So like on their 13th birthday, Peter Pan has come to their window and like met them and taken them on an adventure to Neverland, and then they've come back and then they've grown up. And now it is Daphne's turn, and this is like her story. So like that's like kind of the premise of it. And when Jessa said that she was coming out with this, she said, I really recommend that you read the original Peter Pan story by J.M. Barrie because it will give you some really great background. It'll give you some understanding of the characters and the world. So obviously I was like, yes, Jessa, whatever you say, I will do that. So I actually listened to Peter Pan as an audiobook, and I really enjoyed listening to it. I've definitely like read it as a kid, but definitely not since I was a kid. And I will say that the movie is not the same as the book. Like obviously there's a lot of similarities. It's not like it's a totally different story, but if you think that watching the movie will give you all the information, I don't really think it will. I think that reading the book or just like listening to the audiobook is a really great like foundation before you go into Never. Obviously it's not necessary, but I really encourage you because I feel like it just gave me a really good introduction, I guess, into Peter Pan as a character specifically and what his character is like. You just kind of realize what type of person Peter Pan is, and you just realize that he's not that great. He's selfish, he is selfish, but it also makes sense because the whole point of Peter Pan is that he does not want to grow up. He doesn't want to have responsibilities or a job or go to school or any of those things that come along with that. He doesn't want to commit to anything, whether it be a person or a job or a family or anything. He just wants to be free. So I think reading that and understanding Peter Pan as a character was just very, very helpful before going into Never. So obviously I read this. I didn't rate it because I like didn't really know what to rate it, because technically it's like a children's classic, like I don't know. And then obviously I read Never by Jessa Hastings, and first of all, let us just appreciate the cover of this. I think it is so beautiful. And I'll just start by saying I didn't rate this book because I genuinely don't know what my rating is. And I also want to say I did not hate this book, but I also didn't love it. So it definitely wasn't a 5-star read for me. I honestly thought it would be. I thought going into it, I was like, I'm going to be obsessed with this. I'm going to love it. And at the end, I was just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this. And so it definitely wasn't a 5-star, but it also wasn't like a 2-star read for me. First of all, I'll tell you the things that I really loved about this book, because there were parts that I did really love. The first thing is I loved the writing. Jessa Hastings' writing is just something else to me. I have just never come across writing that my brain loves as much as Jessa Hastings' writing does. Another thing that I really loved about this book was the world building. It's interesting because I've heard some people say that they didn't like the world building, but I personally loved it. I thought it was done in a way where it wasn't like all dumped on you at the beginning, but you just got it piece by piece throughout the book. So like one example of that is Daphne goes on a walk with like this side character, and he mentions something and she's like, oh, like what's that? And he explains what that is, and then it's like, oh, now you understand the political side of this. And then she goes up this mountain and meets this new character, and that character is like, this is who I am and this is what, you know, I have to do with Neverland. And so you get that piece of the story, and it just feels like you get it like piece by piece in a very digestible way. And I just feel like it was done so well. It wasn't like info dumped on you at the beginning, in my opinion. Like I thought that was done really, really well. And the last thing that I just like absolutely adored about this book was it just felt so magical to me. The writing, the world building, the way it was just explained to me, I could see it all in my head. I could just see the places and the people, and it just felt magical to me, and I loved that. Something that actually didn't bother me, but I have seen other people bothered by, is that it's like no plot, just vibes. And I will say Jessa Hastings is like what she does. No plot, just vibes. Like Jessa Hastings does not follow a very like structured way of writing. And so I think you have to go in knowing that it's going to be a bit messy. It's going to be, like I said, no plot, just vibes, but that is just what she does. And so I wasn't expecting there to be a super linear plot, I guess you could say. And there wasn't. So that didn't bother me, but I know it has bothered other people, and I know that some people really need a plot. And so if that's you, probably don't pick up this book. I think something that was kind of difficult reading this book is that there are not many likable characters, which honestly, I don't know why I was expecting there to be a lot of likable characters, because obviously in Magnolia Parks, they are very flawed, very unlikable, but you still manage to love them in Magnolia Parks, which I don't quite understand how Jessa Hastings did that. But in this book, I didn't really like any of them. Like I did some of the time, but they all did things that I was like, why are you doing that? Like, you're an idiot and you're frustrating me and you're annoying me. And so it felt very hard to like the characters, and I think because of that, it felt really hard to like the book overall, like fall in love with the book and fall in love with the characters, because I just didn't. They all frustrated me at certain times, and some of them frustrated me a lot more than others, I will say that. And if you know, you know. But that was just difficult. But I also, again, I think that's kind of the point. I don't think she wrote this book to have likable characters. I also finished this book and just felt a bit icky. There are just parts in this book that I didn't love, and I don't think they're meant to be like so romantic. Like I think there are supposed to be like icky parts about this book, but when I finished it, I was just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this. I feel a little icky, and I don't know how to better describe that, but that is just how I felt. And the last thing that I'll say that I didn't love about this book is that it just felt unfinished to me. And I will say, this is the first book in what will be a series, and it is very hard to gauge my full comprehensive thoughts on a book that is not like finished, or like a series that is not finished. Because if I had read the first book of ACOTAR and the other books weren't out yet, like, would I have liked it enough to continue the series? I don't know, because I didn't love the first book in ACOTAR, but I loved the second book, the third book, the fourth book, and so on. The first book of Throne of Glass is good, but like the fourth book of Throne of Glass is amazing. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, what if this book, yeah, maybe it's not the best, but there's a reason for that, and there's going to be things that are answered in future books. I do think Jessa Hastings is an absolute mastermind, and if you read the first book in Magnolia Parks, I don't think it gives you the full picture, but once you get to the third book, you get it, and there are things that are revealed that make you go, oh, now I understand why these characters are like that. And I'm hoping the same thing will happen in the rest of the series with Never. Like the things that I'm like, oh, this is a bit icky, I feel like there could be hope for future books in the series. So I'm not going to write it off, and I'm not going to be like, I hate this series, I hate this book, because honestly I don't. There are lots of parts about this book that I did really like, but overall it just didn't feel like a favorite book of mine. But there might be potential. I don't know if there definitely will be, but there might be. So I feel like there's just like a lot of thoughts I have about this book and a lot of things I could say, and I honestly could keep talking about it for a lot longer. I think if you want to read this and see what it's like for yourself, I really recommend it because like I said, I did not hate this book. I enjoyed my reading experience for the most part, apart from a few things that did make me feel a little bit icky and a few questionable things. So I'm gonna stop talking about it because I just have too many thoughts, and it just, like I said, I could keep talking about it for a really long time. I don't know what to rate it. I don't know exactly how I feel about it. I have things that I liked, I have things that I didn't like. I am very intrigued to see how the story and like the series progresses, and I'm hoping that there's a bit of like a redemption situation for this series, because I feel like the writing and the world building, like there's a lot that could come out of this, like a lot of goodness that could come out of this, but we'll see. We will see. Moving on. Oh my gosh. Next up, I read None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I've been so excited to pick this up because I've heard incredible reviews. I ended up listening to it as an audiobook, like a lot of you guys recommended, and I'm so glad that I did. It is a great audiobook. It's kind of like mixed media in the sense that some of it sounds like a podcast, because there is like a podcast in this book. And so like the audiobook is just done well, like it's produced really well. But I devoured this in a day. It is very like, you just want to know what's going on. If you don't know what this book is about, it is a thriller, I guess, and we follow two women who are like birthday twins. So they both go to a restaurant on their birthday, and like with their separate like families and things like that, and then they run into each other in the bathroom, and one of them is like, oh my gosh, is it your birthday? And she's like, yeah, it's my birthday. And she's like, oh my gosh, me too. I'm turning, I think it was like 35, and the other girl's like, oh my gosh, me too. No, 45 maybe. I think 45. And then they're like, oh my gosh, we're birthday twins. And then they like start chatting. And it turns out one of the women runs a podcast where she talks about like inspirational women who have like changed their lives for the better and like done these amazing things. And the other woman says to her, oh my gosh, I think you should interview me because I'm about to change my life and I'm about to make this huge, crazy thing happen in my life. And the other woman is like, okay, let's do it. And so it kind of just goes from there. But it's one of those books where you get to the end and you're like, who was telling the truth? Which makes sense because it's called None of This Is True. But I genuinely don't know how to feel about it, and I don't know who was right, and I don't know who I want to believe, but it was such a wild story. And I think if you just want something like quick, something quite different, something that just kind of gets messier and messier as you go along, definitely recommend this one. I also read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which like, why is this called the Sorcerer's Stone in the US? Like, I think that's so interesting. But I read the first Harry Potter book. I haven't read this since I was like, I don't know, maybe like 8, but I haven't read it since then. And then recently my friend Lang gave me the first book. She is quite a big Harry Potter fan, and she was like, I think you should read it during Christmas time. It gives very like Christmas cozy magical vibes. And so I was like, say less, I will do that. And so I read it like maybe a week before Christmas, and it was so much fun. I also read this one in a day because it was just like one of those books that it's quite short, honestly, but like gives all of the vibes. So definitely recommend this if you just want something like cozy, magical, wintry. Obviously it's literally summer here in Australia. I don't know if I'll continue the series. Maybe at some point. I'm not like dying to, but I had a lot of fun with this. Another one of my like Christmassy reads is Lovelight Farms by B.K. Borison. This is such a fun little romance. This is about a girl who owns a Christmas tree farm, and she is not doing well in terms of like finances. And so she enters this competition where she could win a bit of money that will obviously help her keep her business afloat. But in order to win this competition, she has to fake date her best friend, make it look like she and her best friend own the Christmas tree farm together, just to create more of like a romantic storyline for the competition to hopefully like up her chances of winning, I guess. And it's just a really cute little fun story. I did enjoy this, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping to. I ended up giving it 3 stars because overall I was like, it was good, it was fun, but I just like wasn't obsessed. And I like got to the end and I was kind of like, yeah, that was cute. Like, it was fine, it was good, but I just like didn't care that much, and I don't know why. I just like didn't connect to the characters maybe, but I did think the best friend, like the guy, he was so sweet. And there were so many like sweet moments in this book, and I do want to continue the series because I think this series is like, there's a book for each season. I think like there are 4 books total. I think the 4th book is coming out later this year, but this is like the winter book, and then each book follows a different season, and I think follows characters that we met in this book that like live in this town, which sounds right up my alley. So I do want to continue the series. series. So let me know if you have read the series and which one is your favorite out of the series. I just realized that I have a few books that I either read on my Kindle or from the library that I don't have in my like stack of books, so I totally forgot to mention them, but now looking at my book journal, I'm remembering. So I also read The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese, and I also rated this one 3 stars. This is another little like Christmas romance, and it honestly was really sweet, and it's also quite short. It's about a guy and a girl who work at a bookstore, and so it's a bit of a workplace romance, and it's a bit of like a rivals to lovers situation because they're both kind of like competing for a certain position. So that's the premise. I liked it. I don't think it was my favorite, but I had fun reading it. I don't think I'll ever think about it again, so it's like 3 stars from me, but it was fun. I also read Caraval, which I totally forgot about. Oh my gosh. So I read it on my Kindle and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I thought it was good and I did enjoy it, but it just like, it's not the same as Once Upon a Broken Heart and like Ballad of Never After and Curse of True Love. Like, it's just, it didn't hit the same, and I wasn't like expecting it to, but just like going into a Stephanie Garber book, I was like, oh, this could be so magical, and it was magical, and I did like the storyline. I thought it was very fascinating. It kind of felt a bit like a fever dream. It's basically about a girl who's trying to find her sister, and she goes into this like, what do you even call it? This magic competition, which is hosted by this like magic guy called Legend. It's just like one of those books where you think you know what's going on and then it's not that, it's actually something else. And so it's, I don't know if plot twist is the right word, but like lots of layers, lots of secrets, lots of like misleading and like manipulation and stuff. It was honestly very interesting. I just like, I don't know, I got to the end and I was like, yeah, that was good. Moving on to my next book. But I have heard a lot of people say that it gets better as the series progresses, so I do want to read Legendary and Finale as well sometime this year, but I thought Caraval was like fine and it was good, and again I would recommend it, but I just think Once Upon a Broken Heart, like really, like that world just really has my heart. And then I also listened to the audiobook of The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I don't rate memoirs, so I didn't give it a rating. I feel like the best word to describe it would just be like interesting. I thought it was just a very interesting story. I really enjoy reading or listening to memoirs, and I really enjoy just knowing more about people's lives in general. It made me really sad for Britney Spears and the things that she has gone through, 100%. It's just crazy how much you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, obviously. I feel like that's always like what I say after I read a memoir. I'm like, you just have no idea what's going on in people's lives, which is so true. And I feel like memoirs are a really great way of reminding yourself of that, but I don't think it's like the best memoir I've ever read or listened to. Hi, future Rachel here. Apparently I just totally forgot to talk about one of the books that I read, even though it was in the pile of books to talk about. So I also read Jade War. I honestly enjoyed this so much. I was really worried going into it because I found the first book in this series quite intimidating, quite hard to understand, quite hard to like follow along like the characters and know who was who and who was related to who and who was doing what and what position they held in like the political situation. And so I was worried that the same thing would happen again, especially since I kind of like left it a few months in between reading the first and the second book. But this was so good. I loved it, and now I can't wait to pick up the third book. And I rated it at like 4.25. Like, it was just such a solid book, and I just had a great time reading it. I can't say too much about it because it is the second book in a series, but I definitely recommend the Greenbone Saga if you haven't already read it. It's a favorite for so many people, and a lot of people say the third book is the best, so I'm very excited to read the third one very soon, hopefully. This is the point that I got to in the month where I was like, wait, I've read 198 books. I have like 2 more that I need to read. I was in the middle of 4 books. These are the 2 that I decided to finish. So the first one is Falling Embers by Catherine Cowles. This is like a super short little romance, and it's part of a series. So this is the second book in the series. It's called the Tattered and Torn series. I read the first book a few months ago, and they're all on Kindle Unlimited. I definitely recommend them if you like small town, kind of like suspense romances, because they all, I think they all have like this like mystery aspect to them or a bit of a suspense aspect to them, which I really enjoy. I love that in like a small town romance. I think if you like The Edens by Devney Perry, you'd probably like this series. And they're all just quite short and just like quick and fun and easy, and obviously I'm assuming as you progress through the series you get to know the characters even better because it's like all following different characters from the same small town. So the first book followed a guy from this like main family, and then this book followed his little sister. I think I gave this one maybe like a 3 or a 3.5. I think I liked the first book better, but I'm really interested to see what I think about the rest of the series, which I am planning on continuing. So definitely recommend the Tattered and Torn series by Catherine Cowles. Let me know if you've read other books by her and what you think about them, because I've seen people talk about some other books and I'm intrigued. And then the last book that I read in December, and therefore the last book that I finished in 2023 was Daisy Hates a Great Undoing. I did a reread and it was definitely a great decision. This was my only 5-star book of the year. Of the year? I meant of the month. I actually didn't read this copy. I read a different copy of it because I annotated it as a Christmas gift for my friend Soph. It is one of her favorite books. It's one of my favorite books. She read the Magnolia Parks universe for the first time this year and I wanted to do something just like personal for her for Christmas, and so I annotated a new copy of Daisy Hates a Great Undoing. It was so much fun annotating a book for someone else because I felt like all of the notes that I was writing in like the margins and stuff, it was kind of like I'm writing them to someone else. I'm not just like underlining things for myself to look back on, which I still enjoyed doing that, but it was just a different experience writing notes and like doing things for someone else. And it's so fun that we can kind of experience that together because we both love the series, but now she gets to like see what I like thought about things and which things stood out to me. And I wrote like, oh, this is my favorite scene or one of my favorite scenes, and like, oh, I hate this part. So that was just so much fun. And I definitely recommend, if you're a big reader and if you have friends that read, annotating a book for them. It is time consuming, I will say that. Like, it took me pretty much the whole month to get through it because I was reading other books in between, but I just had so much fun doing it. It was just like so special and so satisfying to get to the end and be like, wow. And also like, it's one of my favorite books, so of course I like loved doing a reread. I will say it caused me so much more pain than I thought it was going to. Like, I thought going back into this book, I was like, oh well, it won't hurt as much as it did the first time because I know what's coming. Incorrect. It hurt just the same, maybe even more, because I knew when it was coming, and every time something bad was about to happen, I knew it was coming, and it made me so sad, but it was also great. But anyway, this was my last book for 2023, which also is so fitting because it's also my top favorite book from 2023, so it just feels right that I reread it at the end of the year. And those are all the books that I read in December. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. Hopefully you found some new recommendations. I'm so excited for the new year and all the videos that are coming your way. I have so many fun ideas and I can't wait to just be back making content for you guys because I missed you. And I'm excited for a new reading year as well. All of the new books that are coming out. I literally can't wait. And also, if you guys have any like book video ideas that you would love to see, or like book videos that you love watching, I would love to know, because I would love to make more of what you love, especially if it's what I love, which I'm sure it probably will be because I only really make videos that I like making. But I love you guys so, so much. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas and a great new year, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Goodbye.